Hello and welcome to the Answer Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. You know, I sit every show and I find myself being a little bit redundant, but I hope you're having a wonderful week. I know I am. I'm loving my life up here in Montana, chasing my dreams, living my goals. And, you know, it's interesting. We're in January and on the radio, somebody's like, oh, Happy New Year. My daughter's like, well, it's not New Year's Eve anymore. I said, well, honey, most people look at January as the beginning of the year, and they like to say Happy New Year because for them it's new beginnings, and they're thinking about how they're going to change things and do things differently. Now, I'm kind of one of those people that I celebrate the new year, but I'm already in my vision and goals, and I'm constantly working on them, so the new year doesn't change that for me. However, I realize how important it is for so many people, the new year and that change. And I'm so excited about today's guest because I've got Stu Massengill on the phone. Is it Massengill, Stu?
You nailed it.
Right on. I caught you in a drink of a coffee. Got shot. Stu, I read your bio, and I'm like, you're going to be the perfect person to have on in the month of January to really get people off on that right track if that's what they're looking to do this time of year. And as you know, so many people are resetting their goals and where they're going to be and do and all these great things. So thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm excited to dive into our conversation, so I really appreciate it.
Well, you got a smile on your face. I'm sure it's because you're in a little slice of heaven down there in San Diego, California. I heard you had 80-degree weather yesterday and beautiful outside.
Yeah, sun is shining, and it's pretty awful over here.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, if you don't mind, could you give us some background on you, and then I want to jump into what you're doing. I mean, immediately from your bio, it talks about the work you're doing with Tony Robbins, who's, like this giant, right, within the world of public speaking and motivational and all those things. But give us some background on you.
Yeah, so I grew up in a little town in Northern California, have two parents, an older brother, just like grew up in a really cool family dynamic, like everything. I feel like I was very blessed to grow up around a good culture. I had a mom and a dad that were both just very encouraging people and always have been throughout my life. And so really cool family dynamic. Eventually graduated school, went to college. I went to San Diego State University. And I kind of grew up where I was always more of the shy, quiet, introverted sibling. I had an older sibling. He was like the extrovert, outgoing, all those things. And I was always just the more kind of felt like I was in a shell, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I went to San Diego State to go to college. And that was really the first time where it was like, you're like in the real world in a sense, but college, right? You're on your own. You're trying to figure out life. You're doing your own thing. And I was introduced to a business towards the end of my first year at college. And that opportunity for the next 3.5 years, I actually part-time dropped out of school, went down that. And I would say that 3.5 journey was really the foundation for me of learning people skills, learning how to be not extroverted, but how to be good with people, even though I'm an introvert. And we did successful in the business as well. And it was really an incredible opportunity. And I would say that was kind of the first big step of what's kind of got me to what I'm doing today.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about being an introvert and then going through some processes to be willing to interact with people and kind of be outgoing. So many people that are introverts, they get stuck in that rhythm like, oh, I'm an introvert, I can't do that. How did you break out yourself? How did you get comfortable with talking to people?
Yeah, I think the first thing for me was just a burning desire to get good with people, because I think if you're an introvert, it's easy to not change, right? As humans, it's easy to not change, to not evolve. But once I got into this business, I basically faced this opportunity and this dilemma where it was like, well, if I want to be successful in business is people. So I have to get good at people or I'm not going to be successful. And so to me, I wanted to be successful bad enough. So I had that drive. And then I would say, honestly, one of the biggest, very small tools that really changed the game for me was I didn't know what people spoke about, basically. Like I would be like, how does someone have a 5-minute, 10-minute, let alone like an hour conversation? Like what the heck do they talk about? And one of my mentors, someone that I was studying, he taught me this acronym. It was called FORM. And it's really just like a building block for communication. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and motivation. And it's just a way to get people to really talk about themselves. And so for me, once I got that first structure of like, hey, Stu, this is what you can actually talk about in a conversation. I would say that was the first big step for me, building up enough courage to know, okay, well, now when I find myself in a conversation, I can at least have somewhat of an idea what to say. I'm not going to be sitting there or standing there awkwardly, not knowing what to say.
Yeah, you know what? That is some great advice because, growing up in early business, I never knew what to talk about either. And
yeah.
As I mentioned before we started recording, I grew up in Southern California. I was an extreme sport athlete. Off-road race cars, surfing every day. I wrestled in high school. I did play a little football. But I didn't have anything to talk about with people because I didn't watch basketball, I didn't watch baseball, and I didn't watch pro football. So I'd be on my way to these meetings. I'm like, well, I got to interact with people. I would intentionally listen to the sports news just so I have something to talk about. And it's funny to think back on that as soon as you said that form. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's a good hack. You're like, all right, throw the Padres game on. Someone's going to be a Padres fan in here. Like, that's awesome.
So, Stu, your career's kind of been fast-tracked. You're young. You've stepped into a career, a field that was interesting to you early on. You didn't make a bunch of mistakes along the way, or maybe you made a few. Talk about what you're doing now, because I think it's so fascinating just reading through your bio, and I could easily read that right now, but I'd love to hear you talk through it and what's going on in your life.
Yeah, so the two things that I really do right now, one is I'm a national trainer with Tony Robbins, and so that's basically, I go speak. Tony goes and he does the big events, right? Where there's tens of thousands of people, sometimes more. They pay him a ridiculous amount of money. And when there's a smaller event that Tony's not going to go do, that's sort of when myself or one of the other trainers will go in and we'll kind of orchestrate a team through different trainings. And I mean, obviously with 2020 just passing us and going into 2021, we've been super busy, just like you said at the beginning of the call. For a lot of people, that 2021 is like, it's a fresh start. It's here. And I'm totally on the same page with you that it's like it only changes if you decide that it's going to change.
Yeah.
Right. But it's been a really good opportunity for us to kind of have that door open to work with a lot of companies. And so that's what I do with Tony Robbins. And then aside from that, I'm the founder of Finding Direction. And so we're kind of two separate pillars. One, we have a podcast, and that's all about helping people figure out what they want to do with their life. And it's all about basically like reverse engineering people's lives and figuring out how do they live this incredible life and what were the things they did to get there. And so I'm hoping maybe one day we'll see you on the podcast. And that's one pillar of it. And then the other pillar is called Finding Direction University. Mm-hmm. And that's more so where we bring people hands-on and we say, hey, where are you at in your life if you're feeling lost, and how can we coach you and really walk you through and guide you through that process of getting to a place where you wake up and you can pinch yourself and go, man, this is what I do. So that's kind of all of what I do.
One of the things that stands out about your bio there is beating cancer at 24 and overcoming real life fears. I mean, a lot of us coming out of 2020 like, oh, we got the struggles. But, I mean, to beat a real-life disease like cancer, and being on the other side and helping guide and direct people to be positive about their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, I kind of when that happened, I was on this phase of my life where I went from doing something I loved in my life to not doing that anymore and feeling utterly lost, not knowing what I was here for. Like, it was one of the most painful things I've been through, just feeling lost and not knowing what I was supposed to do with my life. And so the initial route I took was I'm gonna be one of those people. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna find myself. I'm gonna go to these places. I'm a big fan of action sports actually as well. And so my belief was I'm gonna go to New Zealand, to Queenstown, the action sports capital of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna breathe it. I'm gonna eat it, and I'm gonna come out of this knowing what exactly I want to do in this industry, in this space. And I've always wanted to go there since I was a kid. It's like this weird, I think I was born there in a past life sort of thing. So I went there, and I was supposed to be there 7 months, and 2 days into being there, I think it was like 2 days before my birthday, I basically noticed there was like something not going right with my body. Mm-hmm. And so I had a skydiving appointment the next morning, obviously had to go do the skydive. Of course. It was beautiful. Did that, went to the hospital. And then, after like 2 days of just going back and forth from the hospital, They did the like classic, sit you in a room, sir, take a seat. And they're basically like, yeah, like we found a mass. It's either benign, meaning it's nothing, or it's cancerous. But we encourage that you hop on the next plane flight, go home, see your doctor, and figure out what's going on. And so I got that conversation. I'm innately an extraordinarily positive person.
Mm-hmm.
So my initial intake was everything happens for a reason, and it happens for the right reason. Like my time's not here on this planet. And I know this is just going to be part of my story. And so, I flew home, and I think, 16 hours later, go see my doctor. And then sure enough, he was like, yeah, like this is testicular cancer. And so just a side note for any of my guys listening to this, just check yourself. Right. And what I mean by that, to just be vulnerable and open here, if this can help anybody, is basically one of my soldiers, it basically like swelled up to the size of an egg.
Yeah.
And so like if something like that is happening, you notice, I would just say, go to the doctor, get checked up. I was fortunate enough to catch it early enough where, like I'm cancer free today, basically.
Yeah.
It ended up spreading into my stomach. They did this surgery called an RPLND, which is a little bit more of a not as common surgery, but sometimes testicular cancer, it spreads into your stomach. And so they cut me open from my pec to my pubic bone. So, whatever that'd be, like 1.5 feet, they open you up, they take out lymph nodes, and they took out 23 and 5 were cancerous.
Wow.
And then they got it all out. But I think it is a massive testament to one, like the doctors I had, I feel so blessed and fortunate for every single day of my life. And that we did catch it early enough so that it didn't spread a ton, and we can kind of remove all of it surgically. So it was a process, man.
Yeah. You talk about being an inherently positive person. I had, Peggy Sula Wayne on the show as well. She was the 100th Orange County housewife. They tagged her that. She had a great run on the season there with them. But
Nice.
she also had cancer, and she's also a very positive person. How much does your own mental state have to do with overcoming something like that? Because, cancer affects us all. And so do other diseases. Even when you look at COVID and how you approach that, how much does that mental state help you through those processes?
Yeah, I think 99.9%. I mean, it's like everything. Like before I got cancer, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, that like before I had the cancer, I took a super deep dive into personal development for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I like ate it, I breathed it, I slept it, I lived it. And it really taught me to like strengthen my mindset. And when the cancer came, for me, because I now had that mindset, it made getting through this cancer way easier. And one of the things that I did, and I felt was very beneficial, is I think one of the gnarliest parts for me of going through the cancer was watching the way people reacted to it around me. Mm-hmm. Because I'm positive. So they're like, you got cancer. I'm like, cool, let's get it. Let's get done with it. Let's make it happen. This is part of the story. But I go into a room with my parents and the doctor says you have cancer. I cannot fathom being a parent and having a doctor tell me my kid has cancer. Like that gives me chills. And so like, I saw my parents in that room, and as soon as they heard that, you could see it in their skin, in their body language, in their tonality, like in every aspect, you could feel that they were like, holy shit. Like, damn, like, like my little boy, he's got like cancer. And so what I did, and I think this was really helpful, is I took him we went out of the medical room or wherever you meet with the doctor. And I instantly told him, I said, hey, don't treat me any differently. Don't talk to me any differently. Don't treat me like there's something in me that can kill me, because if we plant that seed, that means that seed can grow. So let's just know this is part of my journey. It's going to make me stronger. We're going to crush through this. But just make sure that you treat me like, we're all good and we got this. And I said that to everyone that I surrounded myself with throughout this cancer process. And it made it so easier because, and I have a lot of, I'm involved in the cancer community now. And one thing that is a common conversation from people going through cancer is like how tough